Welcome to another how-to video. Today we're going to do the purple tag out of an E46. This is a common upgrade for E36s or E30s. Notable things for the E36 and E30 is you can use the E46 inner tie rods and then an E36 outer tie rod for both the E30 and E36. You can get away with E30 outer tie rods, but the E36 outer tie rods are more durable, heavier duty, just generally better. So if you can get your hands on a set of E36 outer tie rods, I suggest using them for both E30 and E36. I've got a purple tag seal rebuild kit that I've purchased from Steering LPSR. I'll leave a link in the description. If you're not confident enough to do this kind of job yourself, he does offer tested ones. He also supplies the 14mm spacers that you need to go for an E30. I'm not sure about E36, you have to look into that one yourself. I do have the outer tie rods already. They're on the car, so I'm not going to be replacing them. With all of that information, let's just take it apart. I'll put a link in the description to another channel that's done the rebuild. This is what I've followed. And if you're like me, I always like to watch two just to see how things might vary. The channel's from BadE30. He's done quite a few videos, good videos, on rebuilding E30 items. Check that out if you want to watch someone else rebuild one as well. Lines removed. Woo! Now that we've got all of the fluid out of it, we can remove this cap just here. Which just slides off. Like so. There isn't anything holding it on other than friction. Take that off, put that aside, that'll be reused. Undo this, 22mm. Put it aside, that'll get cleaned. 17mm. Some needle nose pliers. There is an O-ring in there that you want to remove first. Then needle nose pliers the plug out. Both of these parts will be reused, including the spring. O-ring will be replaced, and this plastic nylon thing underneath will also be replaced. Now we're going to undo this nut, which also comes in the kit. Looks like it's some kind of crimped nut, so you don't want to reuse it. Put that aside, but it will be replaced. Next step is a circlip around the top here. Mine's got quite a bit of gunk, so I'll just clean that out. Circlip off. That will be replaced as well. Now that we've removed there, underneath, and the circlip, we can just give it a little tap, making sure to use something that's softer. Feels like it's going. If you are going to use something harder, make sure that you're doing nice, gentle little taps. Looks like it's in pretty good condition. Bearing feels all right, maybe a little loose. Bearing feels all right. Put that aside. We'll replace some of the seals and then clean it up and reuse it. Next step, you can see this somewhat similar to a circlip, but doesn't have any grab points, so we're going to struggle to get that bit out. That's probably one of the most difficult parts of the disassembly. So to get this ring, it will spin. You want to get the opening to this cutout, get a small screwdriver in, underneath, twist it, so then you can get the second screwdriver underneath it, and then from there, my hands are covered in oil. Ah, dang it. Push it all the way across. Small screwdriver in, twist it, second small screwdriver in. Just kind of hold it there. Once you've walked one screwdriver in, walk a bigger screwdriver in, and then walk the big screwdriver around. The ring. I was wearing safety glasses for this. If you're doing spring-loaded pieces of steel, wear safety glasses. You get this in the wrong angle as it comes out, it can shoot out and be a little bit dangerous. Wear safety glasses. It's not as hard as you think. It can be done. Just put a good amount of pressure and it will come out. A couple of seals on here to replace. We'll give this a good clean up and then re-grease it and put it back in. Might be a little bit difficult to see. There's a seal in there about here that we'll need to replace. And then a seal in there that we need to replace. And a bearing in there that I'll pull out now. I'm luckily working in a mechanics workshop, so I do have access to some nifty little gizmos. This is a slide hammer. I can slide it in, knock the bearing out. I'm going to try and replace that.
Hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe.
We can then do the seal. Just cleaned up the end of my drift dolly. Multiple different names for it. The seal does not want to come out. Ta-da! That was a pesky little seal to get out. We do get that replaced, but you can see you do have to deform it quite a bit to get it out. And if you're doing a single point, because you've got a small amount of surface area on a rubber seal, it will slip off. If you can get a bigger dolly where you have more area, you can then push a little bit easier. One down, one to go. There's not a lot of lip to grab onto it. All right, whoops. To get this seal out, I've gotten a body washer, ground it down so it's clearing the sidewalls. You don't want to scratch them. Dropped it in there, and hopefully with any luck, all right, so I spent about 4 to 5 hours yesterday trying to remove one seal, and I want to give a good explanation on how to remove it so then you don't have to spend a huge amount of time trying to work out the best way to remove this seal. Here is the seal, and it sits halfway up. Here is the seal in question. I'll use the new ones for the demonstrative purpose, but I minced mine trying to work out how to get mine out. These two items sit halfway up. If you have the new seal, you can use it as a guide on how big, but I got a body washer and then ground down the outside, making sure to wire wheel any burrs off because you don't want to have a burr on the washer. Get the washer the same size as the outside of this seal, and you can drop that washer down this side. If it's tight, take it out, grind it down a little bit further until it does sit nicely on there without binding in the bore. Next key step is get a socket the right size so it isn't bigger than the diameter of what you've made, but so it is tight to the outside. If you don't do that, the body washer will deform and will just not put enough pressure on the outside of this seal to then press it out. Then get a drift or a dolly, depending on what you call it, and then hit it out. When you're hitting it out, put this bit on a piece of wood, on some concrete to make sure that it's soft but firm. That is how you get this seal out. It was a pain. This is the most difficult part of the disassembly. You don't want to score the bore because these seals run on the bore, all right? Happy hunting. If someone's got a better idea on how to remove this, let me know and I'll do a follow-up video. Drop your washer down, get a screwdriver, make sure it's seated on the top of the seal. Drop your tight socket down, drop your drift or dolly down, put this on some wood, on some concrete, and then hit it. It will come out. With that last seal out from the middle, this is completely disassembled. I'm gonna give this a good clean up. I'm not gonna remove the tag. You can if you want to, but I don't really want to. I'll give this a good clean up, get it painted, and then this part will be ready for reassembly. We do have seals and bearings that we're gonna be replacing. I'll give this a good clean up, remove all of the seals, and then just put them straight back on. I like to do one piece at a time, but you can clean everything, remove all of the seals, and then rebuild later if that's the way you like working. This next part is completely unnecessary, but because of the car I'm putting mine in, I just want to make sure every little bit looks nice and neat. So we're going to just polish up. I've got some 1200 and some Scotch-Brite and some metal polish. That is now ready for nickel plating. So I'll do the rest of this one and then we can sort out the nickel plating for both items. Look at the improvement though. All right, that's both of the pipes polished. Get them nickel plated and then they'll look pretty schmick. So the next part we're going to tidy up. I think this is the rack. This is the pinion. Chuck this in the parts washing tub that I've got. Remove this collar. There is a seal in there and a Teflon slide that we're going to remove. Remove all of the seals and then put them all back in just to make sure we're getting it all in the right spot. I'll go clean this up, remove the seal and then replace it straight away. Just cleaned all of the grease off of the main rack and it's very hard to get on camera, but there is a wear line where center is. Hard to get it. I think that kind of gets it. You should inspect just to make sure that there isn't any major damage. If you've gotten one that's been in a car accident, this could be damaged. So just be aware of that. There will also be a wear line on your pinion as well. But this one looks pretty good, so we can just swap the seals over and get it back in. So we have our rack and our pinion. We want to remove these seals. I've already worked out which seals are going to be replacing them. You want to be very careful to not score this face here. Better off damaging the seal that you're removing. That's going to be replaced with that one. There is a energizing O-ring underneath that we also want to remove. Just run your fingernail along it. If you can feel any dags from where you've removed the seal, you just want to clean them up. I'll just spray a little bit of brake cleaner in there, and then we'll put some fresh oil on the energizing O-ring, and we'll get this seal back in. O-ring back in. Don't let it twist. Seat it back in. And there's the seal back in. Wonderful. Another way to do it, X-Acto knife. Come in on the side. Then push across. Once you've cut it, come in with your seal pick. Get underneath it. Ooh. Get underneath it, and then just snap it. Then we can remove that one. Push. So the ones that have come in my kit are a different color. We'll remove the O-rings. Make sure you put the used O-ring somewhere you're not going to get them confused with the new ones. Give that a quick clean with some brake clean. All new O-rings. With these seals, they can be very stiff. You don't want to break them as you're sliding them over. So you can get some boiling water and put it in there. Don't burn yourself. You can also remove this. We'll remove the seal and this seal after. These bearings don't exist anymore. So do not remove that bearing and do not damage it. The same goes for this bearing. There are SKF marks on them, and as far as SKF is concerned, they also don't exist. So don't damage them. Clean them out, and then we'll repack them when we come to rebuilding it. But we'll put these seals in the water, let them do their thing for a minute or two, and then we'll get these seals over this. Then we can remove the seals and rebuild this. All right, they've been in there a minute or so. Don't put your fingers in there because it is boiling water. That's softened them up a little bit. So let's be very careful getting it over. All right, that's one. We'll go 1, 2, and then we'll come in from the other side and go 1, 2. Getting it up onto this lip is the hardest part. You know what? I think I'm going to change that plan. Push this one over. Yeah, that's much better. If you're having trouble push it from the other side, get the excess. Try not to twist them. All right, there's two. Push, get this on the side and roll over. All right, three, last one. If it looks like it's going to twist, get a seal pick, and you want to make sure you're pushing it up square. And that's probably one of the difficult parts of rebuilding it, but now that that's done, we're good. Next step is to replace this O-ring, which looks to be about that one. So, no, I was wrong. Put that one, old one goes aside so you don't accidentally use it. Then this is the seal, so we'll get that out. Sorry for the rain, the mic is definitely going to pick that up, isn't it? Actually, let's just hold on. All right, so after having a look, this bearing is pressed in second, this seal is pressed in first. So the only way to remove this seal is to remove the bearing. Because I can't replace this bearing, I am not game enough to replace this seal. Sadly, that's just what happens sometimes. It's a shame, but I just can't find this bearing, and if I can't find the bearing, then I can't replace the seal. What we can do is give this a good clean in the seal, in the bearing, and this seal still feels rubbery. So there's still a good amount of sealing ability on there. And let's get this cleaned up and the O-ring back in, because that's another piece that we can have finished. Next up is this little cap. I did score the outside of here with my pliers when I pulled it out, so I'll just give that a bit of a clean up with some sandpaper. We're going to remove this seal. It's a thick boy, so because this seal is getting replaced, we can just be careful to not score the corners. Double check where you cut. Yep, feels good. I've never actually removed one of these, so you're learning with me. All right, so I just got my fingernail underneath it and then some needle nose pliers. We do have the replacement. Old one, put aside. Old one, put aside. We'll wash this up as well. So this collar goes around the main shaft, and this is the same setup that's in the main housing. So we've got a seal about here, and then this one goes in across. So to get it out, we need to push all of them out. Here's the body washer that I used. As you can see, oh, it's maybe even a little bit tight. So I might just modify this body washer just a little bit. All right. I'm going to go grind that down and then Y-wheel it. So then we should be able to put that in there, put a socket around it, and then bash all of the seals out at once. I'll be back. So if you remove this collar from the main shaft, then make this washer, you'll have the ability to knock these seals out of the collar and out of the main body. Let's knock these bad boys out. All right, we've got it in there nice and tight. Put the washer down, socket on, safety glasses on. Let's see if this works, eh? I got a bigger hammer. It is working slowly. This seal is split across. I'll fold all of this in, cut it all out, and then I should be able to put the washer in on the next seal and hit it from there. One seal's out, washer still fits in, socket still fits in. All right, I minced all of the white bit, so that didn't go to plan. I have already removed the twang. It is just the black seal left still in there, and these are a metal banded seal, so there's a metal ring on the outside of the rubber that gives it its strength. So from here, we can just there we go. All of the seals out. Remove the O-ring. Give that a wash, then knock the seals back in. That's all of them clean. Now all we need to do is put the O-rings back on. Just got a little bit of oil. O-ring back on. There are grooves on the back, so we need to line the grooves up. And that's the nylon back in. That one's done. Next one. Sorry about the car in the background. We put the next one on. We're not going to replace this seal, but we can oil up the O-ring. O-ring back on. That one's done. Grab the O-ring. O-ring back on. Nylon flange, I guess you would call it. Oiled up the seal. The white goes to the white. I've pressed it down as much as I can. Get it so it's about flush, and then get a socket and hit it in a little bit further. If you've got a seal installer, now would be the time to use it, but for everyone else, just grab a socket. Just giving it a couple of bashes. It's sitting under the housing, and you want to make sure that you don't have any movement in the seal behind. That's how you know it's seated. Another one done. That's all of the smaller caps and races and whatnot rebuilt. We've rebuilt the shaft. There is a bearing that goes in the bottom that is readily available. If you take that bearing into a bearing supplier, they'll be able to find you a new one. You can replace that bearing. Now we come to the fun part of getting this seal back into here. Into here, into here. So we'll drop the first one down, then we'll drop that one down, and we're going to use the same socket to knock that back in. So we want to get this seal in there. Might take some juggling. I got it perfectly the other way. I've got a little bit of welding wire. I'm just going to use that to get it into the right position. It's a little bit of fiddling, and it's hard to see. Let me see if I can get a different angle. It's a little bit of fiddling, but you can see that it is in there and it is sitting in the correct orientation. You want the smaller diameter sitting like that. Now we'll get the next seal. This is going to be a pain to get in, so plenty of oil. And again, white to white. So the white goes in first. Again, just a little bit of welding wire, just a little bit of TIG wire. You can see that that's sitting correctly, kinda. I can. And when you're doing it, you'll be able to see it sitting correctly. I've made a bit of a homemade bearing installer, bit of all thread, a couple of nuts. This is the seal that we're going to install. Just pound it in. Let's see if this works. It's working. It's working. Probably could cut it a little bit shorter, but that is real difficult to get the shot, but the seal is seated, so we're good. When you're installing the seal in here, this half of the cylinder or the housing is the fluid chamber. The seals for the main shaft run within this chamber. So when it comes to installing these seals, make sure you don't damage inside the bore, because then the seals won't seal. This is the only bearing that you can replace. This goes in here. When you go to pick it up, it'll probably have a seal on it. It is the same bearing. All you need to do is get underneath the seal, pop the seal off, and the seal goes in the bin. You now have the exact same bearing. All right, I'm gonna give something a go. So if you're not game in doing this, do not try this. I've gotten a socket that fits over the outside, and then I've had a look on the inside, and there is clearance for the bearing to come out without fouling on the socket. I've then got another socket that fits on the inside of the seal, and I'm just gonna give it a little bit of pressure. If it feels like it's coming out, I'll keep going. If not, I'm just gonna leave it. Make sure everything's lined up nicely. Oh, it worked. Bearing still feels good, there's no damage. When you're doing it, if you do choose to do this, just make sure the bearing has somewhere to go and doesn't start hitting the points of the socket. We can just press the seal out now. Woo! There we have it. It worked. So I did find a part number on the back of this. It is F208801.4. I did find a listing on AliExpress, I think, so these can be replaced, but you'd probably want to order it months before you're ready to do this job. Now that that's pressed out, we can get the new seal, press that in, and then press the bearing back in, and that part is done. I've just got a socket the same size. If you can press a seal in without hitting it, definitely go for the non-impact option. I've used a bigger socket so it sits on the outside, it doesn't fit in the metal. Once we've got it underneath, we get a slightly smaller socket that will fit within the casing. Just make sure it doesn't slide off. We might be able to just use the bearing to push it in, but let's see how we go. Because my jaws are smaller across, I'm not pushing the bearing in with the weight spread over. I'm just going to put a piece of metal in between so that it spreads the load evenly. Much better. Whew. I was really nervous about that, but that went really well. With that seal replaced, can now go on the cap. That bit is completely rebuilt. This is the next seal we're going to install. It goes in here. Now you've got the fluid and the pressure in here. You want to have this little springed ring on the inside. All right, so we're going to drop that down like so, and then we're going to go back to our old friend sockets, get a socket roughly the right size, So this face is again where Teflon seals will be running. You don't want to score inside this bore. Yep, that seal seated on the back. That is the last seal. We have one more O-ring and then the 4 little O-rings that go onto the metal pipe. We can now start reassembling. The other video from BadE30, one of the only things I disagree with what he's done is install the grease with a file. Please do not do this. Just use your fingers and a glove. You should not be installing grease with a file, as you can pick up burrs or pick up metal filings and then you've just put the metal filings straight into your rack and pinion. So just on the finger, easy. To prep the Teflon, just get a little bit of ATF. That's what the Teflon will be running in anyway, so we can use that to lubricate it. All right. Then get the cap, ATF on the inside, slide the cap onto it. Just going to give it some light taps to seat that cap. If you just hit it evenly from side to side, it will eventually seat. We can now get that metal circlip thing in. Which is a bit difficult, but again, can be done. Like so. That is the rack installed. Next step, we'll get this bearing in. Again, we're just going to get our help from another socket. You can hear that change in sound. That is now seated. We'll then grease up the pinion. Again, please do not do this with a file or anything metal. You don't want to have metal on metal contact. Then we get our ATF. And because the seal runs along here that we've knocked in previously, that means this is a sealed system. This is going to have ATF running in it. I'm going to put ATF in there instead of grease, just to make sure that we don't contaminate the ATF. And while we're here, I'm also going to pull this cap off and just prime this bearing with a little ATF as well. Because the seal is on the outside, that means there's ATF on the inside. We don't want to contaminate the power steering fluid when we've loaded up the system with grease. Chuck that back on. Feels good, feels good. We've greased it up. Clean my hand. I'm also going to just put a little bit of ATF on the inside of this. This is where the Teflon seals run. just so they're not going in dry. We can then you can see this window, I've got it completely in the wrong spot. So we're just going to turn it around so there's a little bit of a lead in. So you shouldn't be able to see the teeth of the rack. You can already see that as I twist it, it's moving. So we just want to keep pushing that down. Push that cap down. It's moving. All right, perfect. I'm just going to give this a little light tap to make sure we can get our circlip in. It sounds pretty seated. Now we get the nut. Get that on. It is pushing it through. And then we can tighten up. Right, once you've tightened that one up, get the cap. Am I forgetting something on that one? I don't think so. .22 mil. Now that that's tight, make sure that that cap's been pushed back down. Get the circlip. Circlip's in. Then we can come back to this side. We've replaced all of that. Because this isn't a fluid chamber like here and over the other side, we can just use a little bit of oil to lubricate both sides. Knock it in. Then oil up the O-ring. Fit the O-ring in. Get the cap and the spring. Spring goes in. Cap goes on. This is 17. Where the hell's me 17 mil socket? I had it here a second ago. What the hell did I do with it? 17 mil socket. That's on nice and tight. I'm not going to put this on. I'm going to mask everything that needs to be masked up, and then we're going to get the body of it painted. The reason why I wanted to rebuild this first is because I need to send this to the crash shop, and I just wanted to have it built before I forgot how to put it back together. I'm going to mask it up, we'll get it painted, good to go. And then we have a completely rebuilt purple tag, and this thing looks amazing. Once again, I've gone with the same paint for the underbody and the steering linkage that I've already built in previous episodes. We can now put the little plastic cap back on top. Pretty simple. Kablamo. And that bad boy is back together. The steering linkage locates on this bit of plastic, and that moves around as you turn the steering wheel. So the orientation of that doesn't matter. If you're using this in an E30, we're using E46 inner tie rods and E36 outer tie rods. Again, if you're putting this in an E30, you can get away with the E30 tie rods. The E36 ones are just a little bit heavier duty. So if you can, go with the E36. We've got all of our old seals. Now that this is finished, rebuilt, they're just going in the bin. I've polished up the steering rack lines. If you're like me and not sure which way it goes, the longer one goes outside to under, all right? And then the other way around, inside to over. If you've been watching this video and you're wondering what this steering rack's going to go in, it is in here. Now, this was a 323 Bauer. I've mounted M4 seats, F82 M4 seats in. I've got a full E46 steering setup, so column, rack, and steering wheel, and I'm converting it to a ute. So it's a bit of a mix-up. I've also got F82 M4 brakes, front and rear, and then F87 M2 competition rims on it. Because this is a primary system, if you're not confident in doing this, look into other avenues. It's a steering system. If something goes wrong, if you don't do it correctly, it can lead to a catastrophic failure, and we really don't want that. If you're in Australia, you can pick up this seal kit for 200 bucks-ish as of the filming of this video, and I'll leave a link in the description from where to pick them up. If you're not confident, you can buy a completely rebuilt kit from the same site this seal kit comes from. They also do a black tag, which is a 2.5 turn to lock, which is nuts. I don't know if you'd want to put that in a street car, but if you're doing racing, rallying, it would be the perfect fit for you. I also want to say a big thanks to BadE30. This video would have taken a lot longer if he didn't have his video up. Although there's some things I slightly disagreed with, his video was a huge help. Now I'm going to throw it over to Office Lewis. Howdy, I'm Office Lewis. And in the previous episode, episode 33, I said we were doing a giveaway to a crab car top. And the competition was naming the crab. We had three main kind of contenders towards the end: Crustacean Lewis, Pince A Maneuver, and Leonardo da Vinci. And I think I'm going to tie break it by making the winner Crustacean Lewis. So if Chaser Williams won, can you contact me on Facebook or Instagram and we'll get a crab car t-shirt sent out to you. Sick. You may have noticed this footage is fairly old. I did all of this about a year ago. So the car's come a long way. If you've watched it from here, I've done a fair bit of work to it since then and it's looking a lot more like a ute. I am using older footage because I'm gathering a lot of bits and pieces. There are a lot of parts to a car, and doing this kind of conversion, I've got to make sure I do it in the right order so I don't have to undo stuff that I've already done. Don't do what Donnie don't does. Also, at the time of filming this, I didn't have any Patreons, so thanks Patreons. I have some now, which is really cool. I do have a merch store now as well, so you can buy the normal t-shirt and the Crustacean Lewis t-shirt. Depending on what you order, I might be able to ship it out straight away, or I may have to get it made up. So if there is something that gets ordered, I'll let you know and we'll work it out from there. Please be patient. I don't have the ability to keep stock of absolutely everything yet, so sometimes I do have to make it as I go. I'm going to throw it back to Workshop Lewis so he can finish up the video. Thanks, Office Lewis. Doing a bang up job as always.